Let's go over what we're going to cover in this week's substantive topics. First, we're going to talk about the firm's external environment. We're going to do some external environmental analysis. We're going to talk about Porter's 5 competitive forces, which is an industry analysis. And then we're going to talk about competitor analysis and particularly the use of intelligence and the ethics issues associated with that. So let's start with environmental analysis. The external environment components of inputs to your environmental analysis focus on, first, the general environment, more broadly focused, essentially. These are the societal dimensions that influence an industry and its firms. They're grouped into 7 environmental segments, which we're going to spend a little time talking about, and quite frankly, are covered very well in the textbook. I'm not going to try to spend too much time here explaining them because you can read it yourself, but I do want you to understand them and understand the importance of those 7 dimensions. More narrowly focused than the general environment, there is also the industry environment. That's the set of factors that directly influence a firm and its competitive actions. And the competitor environment. That's this complements your insights by providing a study of general and industry environments. So you kind of go in a descending order. You think about the general environment, those 7 environmental segments. Then you focus more specifically on the industry in which you're doing business and look at the factors that impact that your business and your industry. Then you get right down to the competitors, your specific competitors, and think about them and how they impact your business. All right, let's talk a little bit about the 7 dimensions of the general environment. I'm, again, not going to spend a tremendous amount of time here reviewing what was in the book. You will find a nice table on page 38 of the book, table 2.1, that gives you some good examples. I'll highlight them very quickly here just for the sake of the lecture, but I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on them. First, there is the demographic segment, and as you can see, there's also this chart that comes from the book that kind of gives you an illustration of each of the segments that from the general environment that impact businesses. But the demographic is, as you might expect, the people-specific elements of the environment. Those are size of population, age, gender, ethnic mix, income, distribution along geographic lines. So those are pretty self-explanatory based on the name. Likewise, economic, external, general environmental factors include things like interest rates, budget deficits, and inflation rates. Again, pretty obvious based on the name, and again, I'd encourage you to look at the chart and the materials in the book on this. Physical is perhaps a little bit less clear just based on the name, but is fairly obvious when you look at the book. We're talking about the actual resources that support the business, things like energy and other supporting resources. Sociocultural segment is really those kind of unique and evolving factors in society that could, in one way or another, influence your business. That is, for example, issues around diversity, issues, shifts in preferences regarding service characteristics, attitudes about work-life, attitudes about the role of particular groups in society. All of those can have an impact on your business. Global, as the name suggests, is international and political, other events that might impact your business, or international competition from markets abroad. Technological is, as we discussed last week, probably one of the most significant factors impacting businesses today. These are as innovation takes place, these are the things that can influence whether what you have today is going to be provide you a competitive advantage tomorrow. And then there's political and legal. These are how social institutions and the like can influence you and your decisions. Political and legal can include the laws, obviously, that regulations, but more fundamentally, even social institutions like governmental bodies and the equivalent. Let's go to our next topic, which gets into how really applying an external environmental analysis to your strategic analysis. The objective of an external environmental analysis is to identify a few factors. First, opportunities. These are the general environment conditions that, if exploited, will help a company achieve strategic competitiveness. So go to the 7 segments we just discussed, and which of those environmental conditions out there do you think you can take advantage of? Has there been a change in the law that may, for example, give you a new advantage? Is there an evolving market expectation around diversity that might give your company, because of a particular product or because of its staff, give it an advantage in the marketplace? Is the market getting younger? And if the market is getting younger, you may want to consider whether you need to make your products meet the needs of that younger market. Threats are the inverse. That is basically things that are out there in the general environment that could hurt your company. So are there, for example, going to be changes in regulation that could restrict your ability to do business? If there were a new regulation, the new antitrust law that effectively puts you out of business, that would be an example of a significant threat. Is globalization going to eat up your market share as businesses from abroad come in to a market that's already crowded? These are examples of things that are considered threats. So in order for you to build what will ultimately become your SWOT analysis, the O and the T, opportunities and threats, are the second half of SWOT, which are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. For the external analysis, which is the last 2 letters, O and T, focus on the external. You need to do first a scan to identify where there may be changes in the environment so that you can prepare and respond accordingly. And then you need to observe and monitor those changes and trends so that you can determine effectively what might result as a result from those changes. And you need to forecast them. So you need to project anticipated outcomes based on what you've seen out there, so that you can assess exactly what your firm needs to do in terms of timing and in terms of the importance of those changes, in terms of thinking through your firm's strategies and your management approach to be able to respond to those both opportunities and threats that come from the external environment.